Hello and welcome to Accenture Viewpoint. We are talking about reimagining, rebuilding, and transformation, and specifically reimagining innovation. Now, as we wind ourselves through multiple waves of COVID-19, and companies and organizations figure out how to respond aptly, efficiently to shifting demand cycles, shifting demand preferences, and shifting demand preferences which might happen not just in the same geography that you're located, but all over the world. Integration with supply chains, which in themselves are shifting. All of this calls for newer approaches, and which many companies have quite smartly and substantively implemented in the last year and a half or 2 years. But could some of this be because of a more deeper culture of innovation? Are companies responding faster and better and smartly because they have an ingrained response mechanism which includes innovation, not just within their organizations, but also in partnership and across? So the larger question in some ways could be, how do you actually try and codify innovation? Is this something that we can bring into our organizations if it wasn't already there? What can we learn from those who are in some ways getting it right, at least using COVID-19 as a template as we are right now? And how do I, as a manager or an entrepreneur or a CEO of a company, learn from the process of innovation? And is it that difficult as some people make it out, or is it as simple as some others make it out? So let's pose all those questions in this conversation that we're going to have with two people, both of whom who've spent a considerable part of their careers in and around innovation, innovating, and on the theme of innovation. So I'm pleased to be joined by Shreyas Bakshi, Vice President and Head of Innovation, Automotive Sector at Mahindra. And Mahindra, he also calls himself an innovation workshipper. And that's the theme that we're going to be spending a lot of time on now. I'm also joined by Raghavan Iyer, Senior Managing Director at Accenture, also the Innovation Lead at the Accenture Advanced Technology Centers. Thank you both for joining me. So to kick off, let me ask you a question which tries to bring things to the present environment as we are today. And Raghavan, let me begin with you. What does innovation mean to you today at this time?
First of all, thank you, Govind, and thank you, Shreyas, for joining us in this event. So from our standpoint, the way I think about innovation is anything novel that can create value for clients and for shareholders. So that's a simple definition that I use.
Okay, Shreyas, what does it mean to you?
Yeah, so I would just like to knock off the word today, because the understanding of innovation has been there since life began, and it will be there till till life is there, because it said innovation or die, right? That's what it's, innovate or die. So the understanding of innovation for me has also been evolving for the last 15 to 20 years. The first definition that had come to my mind was commercial capitalization of an idea, and over a period of time, as I've worked more and more over it, it has reached to a point where I understand innovation as generating disproportionate value from concepts that are new to the context. Now, we can go on talking and elaborate each term to the depth, but I think we'll do it as we go along. But I think this is what it means. So in whichever context you are, you try to do something different, something new. And if that is generating value for all, I think Raghavan also mentioned some of the stakeholders, but I would like to put an entire ecosystem of stakeholders around it. It should be generating value for everyone.
Even as organizations embrace innovation or have already embraced, so one is that you are reacting to environments. I mean, like COVID-19 is a situation, and it's a pretty prolonged situation at that. The other is that it's something that is part of your proactive mindset in terms of doing business. How do you see it, Shreyas?
So actually, this morning I was just getting a WhatsApp forward from someone, and it's a news article which says that smaller companies have actually, the tax data is showing that the smaller companies have not done well, whereas larger companies have made hay. Now, why is that? Now, that is predominantly because they have been somewhere investing in doing or experimenting different things and trying out different things, whereas smaller businesses have been fighting a lot, or maybe just trying to maintain their current, right, and trying to grow their current, whatever they're trying to do, right? So I think that's a fundamental difference. Are you really focusing, is experimenting with something new, something different, part of your agenda or not? I'm sure startups and smaller companies can do it more agile in an agile way, but larger companies can have the wherewithal to really support that in a different way. So if they settle down to being, managing and just growing the current, then they're going to face difficulties. But if they're focusing on finding the future also, along with managing the current.
Raghavan, how do you see this? Maintaining the present and eye on the future. Which companies, in your experience, have better responded to this, are better geared, and maybe what are the mistakes that people have made even as they try and achieve this?
The companies that continue to innovate are the ones that have been successful in the pandemic, post-pandemic, and even before the pandemic. So there is nothing new to innovation. But what the pandemic has actually done is really provided everybody a catalyst to actually think very differently and force people to get into the new, which is to think about the future. Almost 6 billion people suddenly started going digital. Okay, and schools started doing digital, and so it's not about the big or the small companies. There were a lot of smaller companies that actually succeeded, like Zoom. Complete big adoption of Zoom overnight across the board, and they were creating the future already, but their time was not right or ripe for the innovation to be successful. And when the time was ripe, the COVID-19 provided that as a catalyst to actually catapult into the future. Now, having said that, there is always one leg in the current, one leg in the future that you need to keep. And most companies that are now innovating are thinking about how to learn from the future. Just to say, you have so much of data and empirical evidence that can help you prevent and create new pathways for actually shaping your future versus actually thinking what the future will be going forward.
So Shreyas, let's try and drill down a little bit. Now, if you look at this pandemic period again, now, there are companies which, as we've discussed, have done well. If you were to look at the let's say the pathways of innovation within the company, right? So there could be products, sales, marketing, maybe even finance. What is it that has in some ways stood out well or has served companies best in this environment, which also gives us an illustration of how innovation works best and at the times you need it most?
Actually, it's happening all over. If you see the product adaptation, as Raghavan has been mentioning about, right? So everything was there, okay? Digital, everything was there. One is about even existing stuff. So what in the existing is also becoming better adapted. Then let's come to the next part, saying new product launches, okay? Now, again, you would have all noticed about certain new products being launched. Let's say if you look at even Mahindra's table, the public domain information is all about the Thar launch. It has created big waves, okay? Now, it's just a launch. Yeah, it has been rebranded, some refurbishing has been done, and that was pre-pandemic. All the work had happened pre-pandemic, but the launch was right in the middle of the pandemic, right? And the success is there for everyone to see. So look at that part as well. But there'll be a lot of new products and services which are being launched. Right? A lot of home things, even let's say 5-star restaurants. Let's look at 5-star restaurants, okay? Or 5-star hotels. I mean, restaurants now they have become 5-star restaurants, but earlier they were just hotels. To send something out, I mean, takeaways and all were like not very popular. Now they have started giving home services, right? So Zomato, Swiggy, the new offerings like Dunzos. Today, just to get a small thing done, earlier we had to walk down and get something from a nearby store. Now Dunzo is coming and giving it to you. So there are a lot of new ecosystems and new offerings or new business ventures that are coming up. New products also, I'm sure, of course, any kind of a very strong product doesn't come to my mind. Maybe Raghavan can add out here. But if you see this kind of things about launching or maybe readapting existing products, launching new products, or coming up with new ventures, all of this have been thriving.
That's an interesting nuance as well. And Raghavan, I'm coming to in a second. So you talked about the Thar, which I've driven, by the way, and I loved it in Goa, as it happens. That is a product that, as you said, was in the pipeline already. Right, a 5-star hotel, like let's say the Taj group of hotels, responding with home delivery of their, let's say, fine cuisine is a response to a crisis almost, because obviously everything's shut down. How do you look at these two things? Are both the same in a way in terms of culture of organization?
So there is a simple scale. I think the organization that I used to work for earlier, Erewhon, they have made a very nice 2x2, kind of a 4-quadrant theory, right? So on the vertical quadrant, if you put impact, high impact versus incremental impact, on the x-axis you put proactive and reactive. Let's see, innovation, everything is innovation. But the problem is most of the people focus a lot on incremental and reactive, right? Which is what we call as firefighting. Right? Then some people go a level beyond onto the lower right, incremental but proactive, which is what the continuous improvements come in, the Kaizen, Six Sigmas of the world. right? And now if you look at the top left corner, which is high impact but reactive, even there can be innovations. There we call them as catch-up jumps. Okay. Now, if you see Cafe Coffee Day versus Barista, if you remember the times of 90s, Cafe Coffee Day really took a big catch-up jump. In fact, iPhone is a big catch-up jump, right? It's not a new innovation. Even iPods, in fact, the whole Mac suite of products is a great catch-up jump. They are not the first movers in the category, but when they come in, they just change the market. Okay, it's a great catch-up jump. And of course, then there are proactive people. I mean, Elon Musk doing whatever space journey and SpaceX and electric vehicles and all, or maybe there are some others. There'll be many such names that will come to people's minds. But yeah, they are like proactive leaps or strategic leaps that people make. Now, innovation can sit in all of these areas. So I would not like to undermine saying this is not innovation and that is innovation. Right. So it's actually the balance between all which is relevant to the context of the organization.
So Raghavan, tell us about how you see this. I mean, do you also have a quadrant approach to understanding and advising companies that you work with? Where do people sit? How do they move from one quadrant to the other, particularly in times like these?
See, there are multiple models available on innovation, right? So there's no one right or wrong model, but a lot of what we see as examples today are really reacting to the pandemic. And necessity is the mother of innovation, and that is what has happened as part of the pandemic. So a Taj group of hotels shipping food to the customers is because the customers are not coming to Taj food, so the food is going to the customers, and that's just a reaction aspect of it. But in the longer run, I would say the companies that are more successful than the others are that have trained that muscle of innovation or a culture of innovation within that company. And it is watering and nourishing a plant. It is like watering and nourishing a plant. It is really having the right kind of nutrients that you're putting into the plant for it to grow and continues to grow. And so when companies have trained that muscle of innovation throughout, they can respond to any changes like this, any pandemic like this. Okay? And that is what you see. Most companies that are now successful have had the ability to change over very, very quickly and ability to react very, very quickly and still shaping the future. So that's what we see as the most successful companies that are there. And then they're not big or small. So even a small company can be agile and nimble and change versus a bigger company will have, analysis paralysis on how to do innovation and try to, have all those hooplas to get a product to the market very, very quickly. So that is what we see. And there are multiple models available. There's a Gartner maturity model available. There are some other models available that focus on innovation quadrants and talk about which are the best companies to innovate for. But that's a simple thing that I use is really folks that have trained a culture of innovation within the organization can respond to innovation faster and better.
A lot of people who will watch this conversation will say, okay, now how do I identify companies? I mean, if not to work with them, maybe to partner with them, to understand from them or learn from them. How do you know from outside who's in a way getting this right?
You will see them continuously talk about newer ways of working, newer ways of adapting to change, newer ways of improvising, and they will make splashes of it. So, from an Accenture standpoint, we run a program called the Technology Innovation Contest. So every year we invite all our technology group across the globe, roughly 250,000 people, to continue to innovate with us. And we've been running this program last 6 years. And that program has had huge success because even a new joiner within that organization can actually come and innovate. And like Shreyas said, innovation can be a continuous improvement that happens, which is one end of the spectrum, to really a very novel idea that is a game-changing idea for the company. And then some of the best ideas come from the most junior-most persons of the organization. And because they see the world a very different way than what some of the folks that have actually seen the world for a very, very long time. Okay? And you will see that happening as a part of evolution of the companies and newer products and offerings that they come to market with as part of this. And you will be able to spot those companies.
Right. And Shreyas, let's, like I was saying, let's look from within to out. What describes in your mind an ideal innovation environment as you look within in any organization?
So the fundamental difference, I would say is about the leadership. Okay? Are the leaders living the intent? See, there is another term floating in this innovation fraternity, and I'm sure Raghavan may be aware of it, calling innovation theater, which means you're playing to the galleries or a lip service to innovation. Okay, you'll talk innovation. I mean, a leader will talk anything and everything about innovation, right? But when it comes to the, let's say, rubber hits the road or the first action to be taken, what happened to my yesterday's, production report? Talk about that. Okay? So 90 or 95% of his time is focused on operations. Whereas, the most innovative leaders, or wherever I come across, the leaders that have actually made the difference, and which is what some of the examples are also out there, they are the ones who actually live the intent. I'll give you a very simple example. Mr. Anand, which is DC Anand of Anand Group. When I was consulting with this Anand Group earlier, one guy had challenged the collaborators' specifications for the process, and he had come up with a new process. So somehow, during the management review meeting, he came to know about it. Now, when he visited that plant, he let the entire reception area, the whole the reception was set up for welcoming him. He bypassed all of that and went straight to the plant where this whole innovation had done. He went to this person, he called him out, and said, "Show me what you have done." Now, this really personifies living the intent. Okay. Now, each one will have a very different way of living the intent, but I think people are human and they very clearly make out whether the leader is really living the intent or not. So that is first fundamental principle. And the second one I would say is creating an enabling environment. Now, one is like this, the chairman keeping the whole reception, cohort aside and straight away walking into the plant and meeting the person is one way of saying it. But the other way of saying is, okay, hey, don't worry, I'm there. Or like, Pawan Goenka's famous term internally is "Main hoona," kind of a thing. So he's giving that assurance, confidence, saying, "Oh, I'm there, don't worry, try, do something. You also don't have an answer." Innovation, the beauty is that nobody knows the answer. Neither the person who is doing it, nor the person who is reviewing it. We have to figure out the answers. So that is that assurance and the confidence and that enabling environment that you need to provide to make that thing happen. So I think there are two fundamental, of course, there are many more things, but fundamentally, if you look at what is the differentiating criteria, these are the two environmental differences that you will see in any of the
right. And this is something that is, as you said, Shreyas, it's very visible, and it's also visible if it's not there. So and therefore everyone will know where this organization is going.
Yeah, I was going to add one more point to what Shreyas just said. The other is really the acceptance of failure. Okay, so not every innovation will be successful, and organizations that live their true value of innovation will allow failure and will tolerate failure. Okay? And those are the enabling environments that we are talking about. And how many startups succeed, right? And the ability for even innovations to fail within the organization is important to encourage the spirit of entrepreneurship within the organization.
I think companies like Tata's, Mahindras, and all, they also in their annual awards, they also have an award called Dare to Fail or Dare to Dream, or something which is like recognizing failed innovation. In fact, and I was reading about somewhere, I think it was a military organization or someone, where they actually create a funeral of a project funeral. It's actually a ritual. Can you imagine some people doing that and celebrating failure? Celebrating failure, of course, as Raghavan also pointed out, it's a part of enabling environment. These are practices, right? So how do you actually create an enabling environment and live intent are different things? But failures, this is how it can actually get manifested.
Right. And Raghavan, when you visit organizations, I think Shreyas has given at least two very strong insights into understanding whether there is an innovation culture flowing from top, percolating to the bottom. How do you spot whether there is innovation or lack of it, at least particularly if you're called in, and how do you try and help those companies or organizations along?
Yeah, so I think in our business, we help clients innovate and co-innovate, right? And part of this is clients often struggle to have a culture of innovation built within that organization because they're so big in nature. When they're so big in nature, pockets of innovation exist across different parts of their organization, but it's not a uniform culture. And that's perfectly okay to have pockets of innovation exist because that's really where innovation will thrive as well. Now, to build a uniform culture of innovation, all the ingredients that Shreyas talked about, which is the leadership intent, not just the lip service, but the real leadership intent, the enabling environment, and a very strong commitment to avoid failures is also necessary as part of the enabling environment. And that's not often easy to do with large companies. When you go in and start to spot these environments, now clients, hence, as they want to start to build their environment, so they will have one leg, which is to build their own internal culture of innovation, but will also expect partners to start to build that culture of environment and build the innovation for them. Okay, and that's where I think we partner with our clients to bring in that strong co-innovation mindset. And with co-innovation with clients, more and more, I think with the co-innovation with partners and co-innovation with the startup ecosystem, then you can actually democratize innovation in a way where you can bring true value. At the end of the day, I'll begin with where I started. Say, at the heart of every innovation is the inherent desire to create value. And if you're determined to create value, that's what clients want for their customers, their shareholders, and their ecosystem of players. Then innovation can happen from wherever. And whoever can bring innovation, if they can embrace it, that is really will drive value for them in the best possible time frame. Okay, so that's what we spot within what clients see.
Right, and I'm going to come back to where we were within the organization, trying to understand and create that enabling environment. Where do you begin usually? I mean, so assuming, let's say there is intent, maybe it's delayed intent, maybe the intent is responsive and reactive, but there is intent today. What's next?
Yeah, I think then it goes down to really two fundamental, I would say, human cycle, which actually motivates people. One is challenge and the other is recognition. Okay, and that really fuels innovation culture within organizations. So what is the challenge? Yes, organizational intent is there, broader leadership intent is there. Is the challenge focused enough for employees to start to innovate? Otherwise, it's just everybody's just putting in an idea that improve this cafeteria thing, improve this bus schedule. That's like continuous improvement. There are also innovations, there are continuous improvements that needs to happen as part of process enhancements. But if you focus a particular challenge to a group of individuals and say, solve this, okay, then the world conspires and everybody comes together to help ideation around that particular challenge. And then you have challenge and the recognition. The recognition aspect fuels further reinforcement, saying that whatever I did created value and hence I'm recognized. And so anybody that even goes to Mount Everest want to come down and tell everybody that I climbed Mount Everest, right? And that's what is really these two fundamental concepts that actually fuel the human spirit to drive innovation. So when the organizational intent is there, the ability to provide sharpened challenges that we need to solve, problem areas that need to solve. When you have those problem areas that need to solve, you actually see better results versus just blue sky thinking, saying innovate on everything across the world. And some of it may not be innovations that will currently be active to help solve human race for now. It will come 10 years later, which organizations may not pay attention to. But if there is an actual problem that you give the teams to solve, your likelihood of implementing those problems are much faster.
Right, and I'm going to ask you for an example that illustrates this even descriptively, but it seems to me from, hearing both of you that even if you were to start with a dare to win or a dare to dream prize, which is really actually rewarding failure rather than even success in the beginning, you're taking a significant step. Is that a fair comment, Raghavan?
Absolutely. And hence, I think one of the big successes that we see, at least within Accenture, the last 6 years that we have run innovation contests every year. And the prize money is very large. Okay? And the prize money is very large, but more than the prize money, it is the recognition of serial innovators every year on year, helps them to dare to dream bigger and bigger every year. So as an example, we give two areas every year in terms of the focus areas of the challenges. One is innovate for businesses, which is a broad catchment area, and innovate for society. And the innovations that come out in both these areas, innovate for society and businesses, are mind-boggling. It uses the latest and greatest of technologies to innovate and help clients solve client problems. And innovate for society will come up. So the last year, the winner was a team that actually innovated based on a problem. This particular individual had an autistic child, and they solved for autism being a very big problem. They used AI and machine learning techniques to help solve faster learning for autistic kids. And that is a problem that somebody was facing. They brought it to the forefront. They innovated. They went to different parts of the ecosystem to get help. And now their innovation is actually live. Okay? And we help them go live with that innovation.
Right, and that, I guess, I'm assuming, also fosters further a culture of innovation, because this innovation may not add to the company's bottom line, but it's adding to the society's bottom line. But it obviously enriches everyone involved.
Yeah, it spreads the culture of innovation within the team. So when 100,000 people start to see their peers getting recognized and say, if this person can do it, I can do it. And then their best creative thinking comes out. And then it spreads like wildfire across the organization. So today, I think we would say that this is spread across our organization in the technology. And this is a very coveted award that everybody wants to win in every year of this contest. So this is the 6th season that we've just recently launched about 3-4 days ago.
So I would just like to add 2 points here. The other thing that we are noticing is sometimes the management says we want bottom up, we want people to innovate. Now, this, I think, to me is like the fundamental dichotomy. Yeah, you want people to innovate, but you can't just leave it to them. And people talk of bottom up. I say it can't be bottom up. If you leave it to bottom up, then you might get incremental, as Raghavan has also described somewhere. I say up to the bottom. Actually, reverse that term. I say it should be up to the bottom. And it has to be led and driven and encouraged by the top person. Right? In Anand Group, I think you would also see it somewhere. Earlier, they were trying to make HR person the lead. I said, boss, this is not going to work. Someone from the business will have to, HR can support for sure. And there are some HR people who are great in partnering with businesses. But if you look at the mass middle or the kind of highest population of that fraternity, so they will support for sure. But the leadership will have to come from the business side. And so the next step is building the belief. See, the guy will say, okay, I want to innovate. But how? The problem is how. Then now there are tons of methods, there are tons of approaches. Someone will say design thinking, someone will say this thinking, someone will say that thinking, and people then just confuse the hell out of you, right? Now, how? And whatever you decide, you will first have to create a small proof of pudding, okay? And nothing succeeds like success. So you first create a kind of a small study and a small environment where you actually say, okay, this is the approach that we are going to take. How is it working? And how then can you scale up? That is the second part. Another part about recognition that Raghavan brought out, and then that is we hear from almost all managers, right? But there was a beautiful experience that I've had, and that has really shifted my perception of reward and recognition totally. Okay. So the management was, the leaders were saying, the senior middle manager is saying, no, you should give 5%, 1%, 2% of savings to this. You should call them and get them recognized by the CEO so that they have a great feeling and all of that. So he said, let's do one thing. Let's go and talk to people, right? And this is what I talk about contextualizing. Now, in that context, when we went and spoke to people who have innovated, people who have not innovated, all of them, right? So with Airborne, we have a kind of a practice where how do you go about uncovering the unsaid? So we applied all of that to this particular challenge. The fundamental answer came out so strongly was, sir, let me see my idea getting implemented.
Correct.
If I see my idea getting implemented, that is the greatest recognition that you'll ever give me. What about money? You will give me money at the end of the year. You'll give me raise. You'll give me promotion. You will do all of this. Yeah, you'll you'll come and make me meet someone. But if I see my idea getting implemented, that is the biggest satisfaction. And that changed everything. The whole architecture was then revolved around how do you capture, how do you prioritize, how do you validate, and then how do you make sure that those ideas are getting implemented. So that is another very finer nuance, but it was like, call it life-changing, personally life-changing for me, kind of a point that has come out.
Yeah, actually, that is very important because from an innovator's standpoint, getting their idea to market, getting them the enabling prototype building mechanism. So fund the idea during its ideation stage, 2,000, 5,000, whatever it is, to help build the idea in its small prototype. Get the idea evaluated by experts to take it to market. Okay, so grooming that plant of innovation, watering it with the right nutrients is absolutely essential during the stages of innovation and building the culture of innovation. So it's not just about throwing a challenge and saying, I'll give you a prize. It's about continuously encouraging and shaping the ideation and thinking. And sometimes you can combine two ideas. Okay? And some of the best ideas are a combination of 2 or 3 different ideas and saying, okay, let's make an Uber idea of it. And encouraging that shaping is extremely important of teaming and building a much bigger and better idea. And that's what we see most successful organizations do, is to encourage this culture.
Right, and you touched upon this open innovation. I just want to close that thought off, Raghavan. So tell us about, when you think about open innovation again today, how do you think of it, and how is that changing or changed?
Open innovation is extremely an important aspect. Today the number of startups that have actually sprung up within the ecosystem is far too many. Number of universities that are doing startups, a number of researchers that are doing innovation thinking. And to bring about the best into the discovery phase of innovation is extremely important. You don't want to continue to reinvent the wheel when somebody else has done it in a very specialized way. And I think it has become more of a necessity now than actually even a style statement. If you don't do it, you're wasting your time because somebody has already failed on it or somebody has already succeeded doing that. And how do you bring these fragmented parties together to make the whole greater than the sum of the parts? That's really the thinking. And so democratizing this and bringing all of that together as part of solving a larger problem is absolutely essential, because companies don't have the time or the energy to reinvent the wheel. They want value to clients, and they want value to be achieved for themselves and for their organizations. And that is what is actually important as part of open innovation. So in fact, some of the companies are looking for open innovation as a service as well, because they don't want to redo and discover all these startups when companies like us can actually do the bridge making between us and the startups and the clients. Okay? And that's an important service that we offer to all of our clients, to make sure that we are doing the bridge making as part of it.
So when you say bridge making, does that mean just sort of working together, or does it mean like an M&A kind deal?
No. So as an example, I can name this Bangalore International Airport, the CEO of Bangalore International Airport. So we are currently doing work with Bangalore International Airport, where we are contracted to bring startups to innovate along with Bangalore International Airport. Okay, and so we we'll pick startups in AI areas, we'll pick startup in other deep tech areas, bring those startups and as a service to Bangalore International Airport, and they will be jointly driving innovations for BIAL.
And that's an interesting example, Raghavan. I mean, I wouldn't have thought of an airport first when you think of an innovation or innovation ecosystem. So what could one area be where, let's say, an innovation could help Bangalore Airport? And and conversely, what is the innovation that Bangalore Airport is looking for from outside rather than try and do it within?
Simple thing is, how do you detect cracks in the runway? Okay, so using AI and other things, camera detection, you could detect cracks in the runway and avert a lot of different problems. Okay, so simple examples like this, the digitization of the airports, in the experience that is the new Bangalore International Airport experience, is all designed through startup ecosystems.
Right, and that's interesting and illustrative, I guess, for those who will watch. So, okay, last couple of points as we run to the end of this. So, finally, it's about people. We've talked about organization from outside, top down. We've looked at from within. And Shreyas gave a very good example of what really motivates someone at the end of the day. It could be an award, but finally, you want to see your ideas at work. So, at the end of the day, or maybe the beginning of the day, to be more appropriate, you want to get up and think differently, and the organization also would like you to do that, so that you come up with new ideas and then the organization sees them through. So how do we, nurture people, and or it may be self-nurturing. How do I get up every morning thinking that I want to solve some problem beyond what my operational requirement is? Or as a CEO, how do I, it is my job, but then how do I satisfactorily keep my eye beyond the horizon? so to speak. So thoughts from both of you. Shreyas, if you want to go first.
Each one has to first of all start believing that yes, he as an individual also can do something. As long as a person doesn't start believing that it has to start with me. See, as an innovation, also people say that it starts with I. So it doesn't end with I, of course. And all I's have to come together for the real magic to happen, right? So, can you really start with yourself? And then if you just say, okay, someone else will solve the problem, then it's not going to work. Yeah, I wish this problem has to be solved. Fine. I was talking about but what did you do about it? So you dream yourself, and then those dreams have to be shut that they connect with you personally. Now, what causes connect with you personally could be very different. Now, what would connect with you, Govind or Raghavan or me, would be very, very different as compared to what, let's say any other person on this planet. So they have to find that particular cause that they are feeling very passionate about, and then try and make something happen, something differently happen in that space. And once they go along and start doing something, I'm sure they'll be open enough to find different support infrastructures. If not, they'll create their own systems, and many things will happen. As the universe will conspire to make it happen for you. But start with this belief that yes, you can make something happen, and at least get on with it. Try something.
And that applies, Shreyas, whether I'm the senior most person or the junior most person in an organization, right? I mean, essentially.
Yeah. So if I just say it in the kind of three principles, I'm just saying be open, integrate or collaborate, whatever way you're saying. You get too much of knowledge, too many people. You have to find ways to collaborate or integrate stuff and synthesize them and then finally contextualize. So in this context, what do I need to do? So be open, not just to receive information, but also even to give out. Saying this is what I want to do, right? If you're not even open to two-way openness is not there, it's not going to work. So be open, integrate or collaborate, and then contextualize everything. Are the three fundamental things that I'll sort of talk about.
Okay, Raghavan, last word as we run to the end.
So I think an important aspect of innovation that we've not spoken about is continuous learning of innovation as well. While the foundation element of innovation doesn't change, which is really a novel idea hitting to market, creating value, the context around it changes continuously. And there are experts that continuously research on newer ways of innovation, newer ways of bringing it to market, the network effect, the theories of innovation, etc. And it is important for at least a subsection of the organization to focus on understanding the newer ways and theories of bringing innovation faster to market and adjudicating innovation as to what is really game-changing innovation and what is not game-changing innovation, and segregating the two. And for that, I think an important aspect is to continuously educate yourself, continuously read different articles, and also shaping the organization in a way. So some of the newest comers within the organizations are very raw thinkers. They will have an idea, but they will not know what to do with their idea. And for them to be able to then bring that idea and have the belief that that idea is going to get heard, taken up, implemented, and further spruced up to hit the market, that requires the top-down support, which we have spoken about right now. But for them, for the ideator themselves to actually understand how to network effect their idea, how to go and speak to different people, who are the lateral constituents that can promote their idea, that thinking, even to train them on that, is an important aspect of innovation, is to saying, this is what this term means. This is what a unicorn means. People are not even really adept at knowing the lingo of innovation, and training them on the lingo of innovation, getting them inspired around this ecosystem of innovation is extremely important. And that's something oftentimes organizations ignore. So they will learn on their own. Okay, that's not how it happens. If there is an organized way of thinking and promoting this culture from within, that everybody thinks like a startup, then I think we've solved we've solved that culture of innovation problem.
Right. Thank you so much, Shreyas and Raghavan. This has been a fascinating conversation. I mean, I think there are lessons for me as much as everyone who's going to watch this. I think it's about, how do you create a sense of innovation pursuit within yourself, within your organization, understanding the intent, demonstrating the intent, ensuring that intent gets converted into some form of action, working with people outside and within simultaneously, could be in any industry, how to be proactive and reactive, understanding that both are important in these times, and learning from those who've done well, and most importantly, trying to say or figure out, as Shreyas said, what's the magic and how do you create this magic and combine process and creativity to do that. So on that note, reimagining innovation, thank you very much both of you for joining me, and hope to see you soon.